The Haunting Hour. As Kerala gazed into the antique mirror, time slipped away, but when she finally looked up, the reflection staring back was not her own. Trapped, aged and terrified, she realized her worst nightmare. She was no longer on the outside, looking in. The haunted mirror. Kerala, a young and successful novelist, had always dreamt of living in New York City. Her dream finally came true when her first novel became a bestseller, allowing her to buy a luxurious apartment in the heart of the city. Excited to decorate her new home, Kerala decided to personally design the interior. She invited her childhood friend, Susan, for a day of shopping to pick out furniture and decor. After a long day of shopping, they were on their way back to Kerala's apartment when something caught her eye. There on the roadside was an old, ornate mirror leaning against a wall. The mirror was captivating, with a dark wooden frame carved with intricate designs, almost like something out of a palace. As Kerala approached it, she noticed an old man standing nearby, looking at the mirror with a haunted expression. The moment Kerala came close, the man hurriedly looked away and walked off, muttering under his breath. Susan felt uneasy about the mirror, but Kerala was mesmerized. Ignoring Susan's warnings, she decided to buy it, convinced it would add an air of mystery to her bedroom. Once they got back, Kerala placed the mirror in her bedroom and couldn't help but smile at her reflection. She felt that the mirror somehow completed her room. The next morning after her shower, she stood before the mirror, admiring herself. Minutes turned into hours as she gazed into her reflection, entranced by her own beauty. It was only the sound of her phone ringing that snapped her back to reality. Shocked, she realized she'd been staring at her reflection for over 2 hours. Dismissing it as a harmless fascination, she brushed off the strange experience. But this was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Kerala's fascination with the mirror grew. She spent more and more time sitting before it, watching herself, captivated. Her world began to shrink as she became increasingly isolated, avoiding her usual activities and ignoring invitations from friends. Susan, worried about her friend, urged Kerala to join her for a morning run. Reluctantly, Kerala agreed, and the next morning she met Susan at the park. However, when Susan saw Kerala, she was taken aback. Her friend looked much older than before, with wrinkles around her eyes and grey strands in her hair. Shocked, Susan asked if she was all right, but Kerala didn't understand what Susan meant. She quickly pulled out her phone, turned on the front camera, and gasped in horror. Her once youthful face now looked aged and tired. Making up an excuse, Kerala rushed back home, desperate to see herself in the mirror. To her relief, in the mirror, she still looked as young and beautiful as ever. But the relief was short-lived. While staring into the mirror, she began to feel dizzy, and before she knew it, she fainted. That night, Kerala woke up to the sound of a woman's scream. Startled, she looked around but saw no one else in the room. The scream, it seemed, was coming from the mirror itself. Terrified, Kerala approached it, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Her reflection was pounding on the inside of the mirror, desperately trying to get out. The woman in the mirror looked exactly like her, but seemed trapped, imprisoned behind the glass. She watched as her own reflection mouthed words she couldn't hear, pleading and screaming. Panicked, Kerala tried to turn away, only to realize her body felt strange, as if she was somehow disconnected from it. Desperately, she glanced at her bed and froze. Lying there, fast asleep, was her own body, while she, her soul, her consciousness, was trapped inside the mirror. She began to scream, banging on the glass from the inside, trying to break free, but no sound came out. In a fit of despair, she reached for an object on the side table and threw it at the mirror, shattering it into countless pieces. Yet, as the shards scattered across the floor, Kerala saw in each one a different reflection, an old woman's face staring back at her from every broken piece. Realizing the horrifying truth, she understood that she had aged rapidly while being entrapped by the mirror, her youth and beauty stripped away. Desperate, she picked up her phone to check her appearance, but the screen was nothing but a blur. No letters, no numbers, just darkness. Trembling, she knew she was seeing herself as she truly was now, aged, withered, a shadow of her former self. Suddenly, the mirror, which should have been shattered, appeared back on the wall, whole again. Kerala saw herself once more inside the glass, young and beautiful, but helpless and trapped. She cried out, but no one could hear her. From that day on, Kerala was never seen again. A few days later, Susan, concerned after not hearing from Kerala, went to her apartment with the police. But when they arrived, they found no trace of her, or the mirror. The only thing left was an eerie silence, a lingering chill in the air, and an overwhelming sense that something sinister had occurred. To this day, people claim to see an old woman wandering the dark streets of New York, always near mirrors, staring at her reflection with a look of longing and despair. Some say that if you look closely, you can see a younger woman trapped within the glass, silently pleading for someone to release her. In conclusion of the story is, the story of Kerala and the haunted mirror is a chilling reminder of the dangers of obsession and vanity. Mirrors are often seen as windows to our souls, but what if they are also gateways to something darker? Kerala's tragic fate serves as a haunting cautionary tale, warning us about the potential perils of beauty and the unknown mysteries that lie hidden within the reflections we take for granted.